It's Jen from Windrose Fiber Studio, and welcome to the Tucson Chill Top tutorial part 2. I'll link part 1 in the description below. In part 1, we did the entire body of our top, front and back. Today, we'll be making the sleeves and doing some light finishing work. Let's go ahead and dive in. You can see I have my top laying out. The front of the right side is facing me. The neckline is to the right. And I'm measuring out 14 inches. This is going to be the size of our sleeve opening. Remember, these are Dolman sleeves, so the opening is a little bit longer. And now I'm sliding my piece down so I can count how many stitches that is from the bottom of my top. And I discovered that my stitch marker is placed at stitch number 31. And at first I decide I want to move it down one, and then you'll see me move it back up because I like the idea of an even number of unworked stitches at the bottom or at the side of my top. And then I'm going to count up for the other side, the back side, and place the stitch marker through both layers of fabric. So for my top to have 14 inches from the shoulder, I have 30 unworked stitches at the bottom. This will be different for everyone. It'll depend on the yarn you're using, the hook size you're using, your personal gauge, how long you wanted your top to be. So just remember that your piece is customized to your specifications and your numbers won't be the same as mine. So after putting a stitch marker in both sides, I'm taking one of them out and just using one stitch marker to hold the two sides together. So now I have the length of my sleeve opening marked, and I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to do the same thing for the other side. So I'm just going to count up the same number of stitches and place my stitch marker on this side of the top, holding the two sides together. Be careful when you're counting the stitches on the side with your foundation double crochets, this one right here, because your foundation double crochets will have a couple of unworked chains on the end. So just make sure you're counting that first stitch and not those beginning chains. Okay, so now that we have both sleeve openings marked, I'm going to flip my piece back around and we're going to start off working on what will be your left sleeve if you're wearing the top. The stitch marker at the shoulder has been placed between two stitches. I would like you to go ahead and move that stitch marker so it is placed in the stitch towards the front of the piece. So rather between two stitches, just go ahead and move it to the stitch that's more towards the front. We're going to use this as our center point. And now from that point, we're going to skip 3 stitches and place a stitch marker. And then we're going to skip 3 more stitches and place a stitch marker. There will be 5 stitch markers on the front, then that middle stitch marker, and then we're going to do the same thing for the back side. These markers are placed where we'll be making our increases that will create the gentle poof for our puff sleeves. So I have 5 stitch markers and then this one at the very top center, and now I'm going to turn the piece over and do the same thing for the back side. I skip 3 stitches and then place a stitch marker. So there'll be a total of 11 stitch markers, the one at the top of the shoulder, 5 in front and 5 in back, and each will have 3 stitches between them. I now have all of my stitch markers in place, and this first sleeve is all set up. I'm going to go ahead and set up the other side. First of all, we need to find the top center of this sleeve. You can count, but you can also look at where the increases are on row 2, because between those two increases is the center, and if you follow that down between the 2 stitches below those increases, the stitches where those increases were placed is the center, and then we're going to air towards the front. We're actually going to place the stitch marker in the stitch towards the front, so it's no longer between stitches, it's in a stitch. Here you can see me moving that stitch marker from being between stitches to the stitch that's towards the front of the top. So now it's time to place my stitch markers. I just wanted to show you how you can use scraps of yarn as stitch markers. Not everyone has lots of stitch markers laying around. And so I'm going to skip 3 stitches, and then I'm going to use my crochet hook just to pull the folded scrap of yarn through, and then I'm going to grab the ends and pull that through. If you've ever done a latch hook project, this motion will feel very familiar. But this is just a really quick way to use a scrap piece of yarn as a stitch marker. I'm going to speed through this side. I've got my center one at the shoulder, and now I'm putting 5 stitch markers on the front and on the back. Each are separated by 3 stitches. Now both sleeves are all set up and ready to go. I'm going to flip my piece back around and start with the left sleeve. So notice I have the right side facing me. I'm going to open up that opening, and I'm actually going to start working with the wrong side facing. I'm going to be working counterclockwise around, starting at the back of the sleeve with the wrong side facing. I hope that's not confusing. It's the inside of your sleeve that's facing you as you work this first row. And we're going to begin by joining with a standing double crochet, and then we're going to double crochet 2 together. Please remember that we're still working in the back loops only. Now just double crochet up until you reach your first stitch marker. Here we are at the first stitch marker. You can go ahead and take the stitch marker out. We're going to be working a double crochet increase into the back loop of the stitch. That just means to place 2 double crochets in this stitch, and then we're going to work double crochets across to the next stitch marker. So these 3 stitches, just get a regular back loop only double crochet. And now at this stitch marker, we're going to do a 3 double crochet increase. This means placing 3 double crochets into this stitch. We're going to alternate double crochet increase, 3 double crochet increase as we work across the stitch markers. So this one was a 3 double crochet increase. And now on this stitch marker, you're going to place a double crochet increase. That means 2 double crochets. And then we work up to the next stitch marker. And this one will get 3 double crochets. This is a 3 double crochet increase. And now we'll crochet up to the next. You can see I've sped up the film because I want to show you this whole row. but I know time is precious, so I've just decided to work a little faster here. This one gets a double crochet increase, so that's 2 double crochets. And now 3 more stitches, and we're at the top of the shoulder. So this top one gets a 3 double crochet increase, 3 double crochets in this stitch. And now we're going to be working over the last 5 stitch markers. It'll be 2, 3, 2, 3, 2. So this one gets a double crochet increase, that's 2 double crochets. And now we're going to do 3 double crochets to the next stitch marker. This one gets a 3 double crochet increase, so that's 3 double crochets. Three stitch markers to go. This stitch marker gets a double crochet increase, which means 2 double crochets into the same stitch. I know I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but we're almost there. The second to last stitch marker gets 3 double crochet increase, so 3 double crochets in the same stitch. And then we're cruising right along to the last stitch marker, and this gets a double crochet increase, so 2 double crochets. All in the back loops. We want to keep our gentle ribbing going, and now we can just double crochet across until we are 3 stitches from the end. We're going to do double crochet 2 together, or double crochet decrease over these next 2 stitches, and then double crochet in the last stitch, which is also where our stitch marker is located. I'm placing a stitch marker in my loop so I don't lose my work while we take a moment and look at the beginning of our sleeve. So you can see that it's bowing out just a little bit everywhere where we worked an increase. If you wanted less of a poof, you could work just 2 double crochets in each stitch marker. If you wanted more of a poof, you could do a 3 double crochet increase in each stitch marker. Now is the time to decide, because we're about to carry on, and our next 4 rows are going to be the same pattern. So here I am back at that last stitch. I'm going to chain 3, turn. Remember, back loops only. We're going to work a double crochet into the first stitch, and then a double crochet 2 together over the next 2 stitches. This is a double crochet decrease. And now you're just going to double crochet all around until you come to the last 3 stitches, and then you'll double crochet 2 together and then work a double crochet in the last stitch, chain 3, turn. So for the next 4 rows, our stitch pattern is the same. Before I go off and do this for myself, I just want to show you the end of this row. You can see I'm decreasing, or double crochet 2 together, and then working 1 double crochet into the last stitch, and then I can chain 3 and turn, and I work 3 more rows just like this. So I will come back at the end of row 5. I just finished my 5th row, and I just love taking a moment to see how our sleeve is shaping up before moving on. The next 3 rows are worked with the same pattern. You'll be working 2 double crochets and then a double crochet 2 together. In other words, double crochet, decrease, double crochet, decrease all the way around. I just wanted to show you the stitch pattern a couple of times before we get to the end of row 6. This pattern is not going to work out evenly across all 3 of these rows. So you can see as I'm coming to the end of my row, my next stitch should be a double crochet 2 together, but I only have 1 stitch left. Not to worry, I'm just going to double crochet into that last stitch, chain 3 and turn. But then for this next row, I'm going to go ahead and work a double crochet 2 together over the first 2 stitches. And then I'm going to go back to my pattern of double crochet, double crochet, double crochet 2 together. And the reason I'm doing it like this is so that our double crochet 2 togethers are not stacked right up on top of each other. I want to kind of space them out. So when you get to the end of your rows or the beginning of your next row, just use your judgment so that you're spacing out your double crochet decreases evenly across these 3 rows. You can also see how our decreases at the beginning and ending of each row has created this gentle angle underneath our arm, and that's intentional so there's not a lot of excess fabric that feels bulky under our arms. We have 1 more row left before the end of our sleeve, so now it's time to take a couple of measurements so that you can customize your sleeve opening to your arm. You can see that my sleeve folded in half is 9 inches, so I probably have around 18 inches around on this sleeve. I'm hoping for a sleeve opening that's maybe around 10.5 to 11 inches, so I need to almost reduce mine by half. Now this is going to vary for all of us. For my last row, I'm going to decrease every other stitch. If you need an opening that's a little wider, you might decrease every 3rd stitch. If you really need to shrink your opening, you might decrease all the way around. Truthfully, you may need to work this row a couple of times until you get your opening just the right size for your arm. Please make a note of any modifications you make as you're working this first sleeve, because you'll need to repeat them in exactly the same way as you're working your second sleeve. I'm going to jump ahead to the end of row 9. You can see how much that brought the opening together. If I measure it now, it's right around 6, but I know my last 2 rows of single crochet are going to bring that in even a little bit more, so I'm pretty happy with my distance. And if you're not happy with yours, you might need to experiment just a little bit until you get it just right. Remember, your fabric will have some stretch. To finish off our sleeve, we're going to work 2 rows of single crochet around. The wrong side was facing, so I'm going to chain 1 and turn, and for this row the right side is facing. For the first time in this entire pattern, you're going to work through both loops of the stitches, not the back loop only, but through both loops. I'm being careful not to have my tension be too tight because I really don't want to draw the opening of the sleeve together anymore. Here I am at the end, and you can see if I pull on it just a little bit, I can easily get up to 5.5 inches, which I'm feeling really good about. And now I'm going to work my last row of single crochet around, but I want to continue to have the right side facing. So rather than chain 1 and turn, I'm going to work a slip stitch into the first single crochet of that row to join the last stitch to the first stitch, and then chain 1, single crochet into that same stitch, and each stitch around. I've just come to the end of this second row of the sleeve trim, and I'm going to join with a slip stitch to the first single crochet. And I'm not going to finish off at this point. I'm going to place a stitch marker in my loop just so my work doesn't pull out. And let's have a look. Now's the time to double check, make sure you're happy with your opening. Also be sure to take notes on any changes you did to the pattern so that you can repeat them on the second sleeve. Because now we're going to sew our side seam. Once this side seam is in, it'll be very hard to make changes to the sleeve. So make them now, because here we go. We're going to finish off this side of our top. To prepare for the side seam, I'm feeding my skein through my sleeve opening and turning my work inside out. Once you get everything all lined up, you're ready to begin. We're going to be working from the opening of our sleeve, under the arm, and all the way down the side. I really like to take my time with this, so let's work through these stitches under the sleeve together. The first thing I'm doing is chaining 1, and then my very first single crochet is going into the first row of the sleeve trim, that row of single crochet, but now it's time to work through the end rows of the double crochet. I have found that it's a little crowded to place 2 single crochets in each end row, so I do 2 and then 1. The way I place my stitches is I kind of go through, if you look at your stitches, there's the top of the stitch and then the post. So I go through the top of the stitch on each side, and I just take my time and find the top of the stitch and work my single crochet, and now I'm going to go through the post. So I'm just going underneath the post of that double crochet. For the next end row, I'm just going to work 1 stitch. So for one side it's going to be a chain 3 turn, and then the other side it's going to be the post. For our finished work to look nice, we really need to pay attention to where our ribbing is. And I really take the time to look on the inside, see where those ridges are from the ribbing, and make sure that I am lining those up. So here I'm going through the top of the stitch again, and then the post. It's so easy to have your work shift or to get a little confused about which row you're in. You'll see me at one point pull my work out and go back because I'm just making doubly sure that I'm placing all of my stitches in the right place. I think we're there. So here I am, I'm lining up those ridges, and it's making me a little doubtful of the last stitch I made. So I'm going to go ahead and pull out a stitch and go back And I'm just making doubly sure. I believe those stitches were in the right place anyway, but I am making doubly sure that I'm placing all of my stitches exactly where I want them to be. So this is just, the reason why I filmed this whole thing is because I really want you to see me taking my time, making sure I'm really happy with my stitch placement. It'll be easy once we get to the side because we'll just be working in those even rows of single crochet, but working in end rows is a little more challenging. So just a few more rows to go. Still taking my time to line up and work my stitches carefully. These are going through the post, and now just one in the next end row. I'm also going to keep track of how many stitches it takes me to go from the cuff to the bottom stitch marker, so I can recreate that same number of stitches when I'm working the other sleeve. I want these sleeves to feel exactly the same. So it only takes me around 16 stitches or so to get from the cuff to the underarm stitch marker. And I'm working these stitches nice and loose. I don't want to cinch the work at all. I'm going to go ahead and place my stitch marker and check my work. If I flip it back right side out, I'm checking to make sure all of the ribbing lines up, and I'm really happy with how that's looking, how those rows are connected. And I want to make sure I'm happy with that before I continue on and finish my side seam. So I'm feeling pretty good. I hope you are too. So I'm just going to go ahead and flip my work back around and get my hook ready. So my next stitch, I'm joining the front to the back right at that stitch marker at the bottom of the arm. And it's very satisfying to get to remove a stitch marker because it means we're nearing the end of our project. And now I'm just going to work these single crochets evenly across. We're working through both loops. And I'm just going to continue to be careful, make sure I'm lining up the front to the back, and I'm going to work my way down. Here we go, we've made it to the end of our side seam. I'm just trimming my yarn and pulling it through the loop. Let's flip our work right side out again. We can see our cute little puff sleeve right there. Let's have a look at our side seam. Look at how nice and neat that is. Very cool, very geometric. I am loving how the ribbing has come together. And now we just need to do this one more time. Are you ready to start the second sleeve? So for the second sleeve, the important thing to note is we are starting with the right side of our work facing and the back side. So the front of my top is facing the table and I'm starting with the back side. And I'm going to join with a standing double crochet. We're back to working into the back loops. So we're going to work this sleeve exactly the same way we worked our first sleeve. The main difference here is that we're starting with the right side facing and the back of the top. So you can head back to the timestamp 7 minutes and 58 seconds and follow the directions for the first sleeve until you reach those last 2 rows of single crochet. So here I am at those final 2 rows. On the last row of double crochet, the right side is facing you, so we're not going to be chaining one and turning. We're going to go ahead and join this row to the beginning with a slip stitch to the first stitch, then chain one, and now we're going to single crochet around. At the end of this row of single crochet, we're going to slip stitch to the first stitch, chain one, and then single crochet into that same stitch, and then you'll be finishing this last row of single crochet and working your side seam just as we did with the first sleeve. It almost feels wrong to be cruising on ahead this fast, but I'm assuming that you've got your sleeves done and everybody is ready to work the trim for their crew neck. So you can see I've got the right side of my top facing me, and I've got it turned so that I'm starting at the center of the back. So the center of the back with the right side. And I need to find the center point, so I'm just counting my rows until I reach the center. So it's this row right here, and I'm going to join with a single crochet. Just like we worked the end rows under the sleeves when we were joining those sides together, I'm not putting 2 stitches into every end row. I'm putting 2 single crochets into the end of one row and then 1 into the next. 2, 1, 2, 1. I find that if you put 2 single crochets into the end of each row, it's very crowded. So I'm just working with a nice relaxed tension. I'm working in the top of a stitch around the post and then into the end of the next row. Top of stitch, post of stitch, into the next row. And I'm doing this until I reach the side. And then I'm going to work single crochets down those stitches that we left unworked on the side. For me, that's 7 stitches. For you, that may very well be a different number. But it's just the side of your neckline. And then we're going to be getting to our increase rows. And I'm just going to carefully place my stitches, 2, then 1, 2, then 1, as I work my way across the front. I find that this gives our crew neck structure, helps it hold its shape, keeps it from being too stretched out, and it's just a very simple way to give it a clean, finished look. When you're working the increase and decrease rows, you might need to look a little more carefully for the perfect place to put your single crochets. I find that you want to go under more than one piece of yarn for it to feel nice and secure. You don't want to stretch out a single strand. See, here's our double crochet 3 together, and I'm making sure I go under at least 2 pieces of yarn there, and then the post. And now we're on to the next side, so now I can just work single crochets evenly up the next size. Our piece is getting really big to manage, so here we are. Don't worry about that back loop being pulled kind of loose by your decrease, because as you work the trim, it'll bring all of that together for you. And now I am back to the back. This is a stitch marker that was just left over from working the body, so I'm going to take that out, and now I'm going to work across the back until we meet that middle. I also have not woven in my loose ends yet, so that's a project still waiting for me. You can see I'm checking my work to see if I want to put 1 or 2 single crochets in this first end row. I was placing 1 in the chain 3 turn rows, and so this is going to get just 1 stitch, and then there'll be 2 stitches in the next end row, and that'll have everything work out nice and even when I get back to the center where I began. When you get back to the beginning, slip stitch to your first single crochet, chain 1, and then single crochet into that same stitch and into each stitch around. When you get to that last stitch of the second row, do not slip stitch to the first stitch. Instead, we're going to finish this project with an invisible finish off. Let me talk you through it. Cut your yarn, and then you're just going to pull that cut in through and thread that yarn into your yarn needle. We're going to join this last stitch to our first stitch. We're going to go under both loops of the first stitch, and then we're going to go between the front and back loops of the last stitch. And we're also going to catch, there's a little piece of yarn right behind that back loop. I'm also going to catch that as I pass my needle through, because that serves as a nice anchor. And then we're going to pull this yarn, but we're not going to pull it tight. We're only going to pull it until it makes a nice looking chain. And it just gives your work a seamless finished look. So if you've never done an invisible finish off before, that's how you do one. And now it's time to weave in all of our loose ends. Maybe we'll take a quick peek at our crew neck first. You can give those rows of single crochet a little tug just to even out the tension. I hope you're happy with the shaping of your crew neck. I'm going to disappear and weave in all of my loose ends and come back and look at our whole top. I really am happy with how this yarn made up. I'm really enjoying all the color variation. I love our little poof sleeves and our comfy crew neck. I have chosen on this top not to trim out the bottom hem. I like that scalloped look, and I like that it still maintains all of its stretchiness. My goal truly is for this top to be relaxed, comfy, and chill. Here's our finished Tucson Chill top, right in my backyard in Tucson, sitting in front of my Palo Verde tree. I hope you enjoyed this project. I really enjoyed bringing it to you. If so, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to my channel. It would mean so much to me. I share videos every Tuesday. I'm really looking forward to sharing more of my patterns with you. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.